John McTiernan had directed Predator and Die Hard previously, and Last Action Hero in 1993 looked all set to better the massive successes he had enjoyed before. Unfortunately, it seems audiences weren't ready for another Arnold Schwarzenegger blockbuster, and it seems that many stayed away. But looking at it now on this new 4K disc, it seems hard to understand why. It's another Arnie classic, and it's never looked so good. Last Action Hero would have made a very fine release onto the Super 8 home movie market, but alas only the theatrical trailer made it into our homes, and that was courtesy of good old Duran Film Services. It is another release of exceptional quality and gives a good idea of the story and the content of the feature. A fine souvenir on that miraculous little film gauge that brought home cinema to so many years before it was ever possible with video projection. Danny Madigan is a big fan of the Jack Slater films, and this yarn sees him in his local cinema watching the Jack Slater films, where he has become friends with Nick the projectionist. Nick has been given the task of checking the print for the new Jack Slater film, which is about to be premiered in another cinema, and he invites Danny to come along at midnight for a secret, private screening. Nick presents Danny with a golden ticket that he says was given to him by Harry Houdini, and that it's a magic ticket. When dynamite is magically shot out of the screen to land just where Danny is sitting, it seems this claim of the magic ticket is true. Danny finds himself blown into the film and immediately becomes Jack Slater's sidekick in the movie. It's all another complete load of nonsense, of course, but it's great fun, and the contrast between the movie world and the real world is beautifully handled. It's hard to believe this film was not more successful at the box office, particularly with a supporting cast that included F. Murray Abraham, Charles Dance and Anthony Quinn, and, if you squint and look closely enough, even Humphrey Bogart. Early computer-generated imagery at work there, clearly. There were 70mm blow-up prints for premiere houses and 8-track SDDS sound, that's Sony Dynamic Digital Sound, for those cinemas equipped for it. This film was expected to be big. An estimated budget of $85 million was huge at that time, and even though press stories have perpetuated the myth that this film was a flop, it actually took $137 million at the worldwide box office. Evidently that was far lower than anticipated, because it was a nice surprise when the LaserDisc arrived on the market so quickly. I was one of those who succeeded in missing the film in the cinema, and I have a theory as to why so many of us stayed away, and that is because the teaser trailer was playing for ages before the film was finally actually released, and by that time we'd already grown tired of it. That first trailer didn't paint the picture in the best possible light, and the constant repeated viewings were responsible for putting people off. It looked like a bit of a silly film, and indeed it is, but as soon as I saw the LaserDisc, I saw the error of my ways. It's silly, but it's spectacular, and genuinely entertaining, and also very funny. And with the success of VHS, LaserDisc and then DVD prior to the latest pay-per-view sites online, surely Last Action Hero must have proved to have been quite a big earner by now. Maybe this 4K release will put the icing on the cake. I think young Austin O'Brien was great in the role of Danny, who idolises Arnold Schwarzenegger in his role as Jack Slater, and Arnie has rarely been better. He doesn't seem to mind all the constant jibes and jokes at his own expense, and delivers his self-mocking lines with good humour and a cheeky smile. I knew this 4K transfer was going to be a good one because the PAL LaserDisc was so good. The original format was 2 times squeezed anamorphic 35mm, and it must have been very fine-grained negative stock. So many films during this period look fabulous, and this one is no exception, and that is the overriding reason why this transfer is so good. However, perhaps take a look at the Blu-ray in this set first, because it is almost equally as good as the 4K. This will also ensure you can maximise your image when you sit down to watch the 4K, because the HDR may make it look a little too bright on your system, just as it did on my projector, but only just. so I put the brightness down a few notches and the contrast up by an equal amount, and this meant I had the best result with the HDR on the maximum setting. Have it all set too bright and it will look a little wishy-washy, and you may then be distracted by film grain, which should really be almost invisible, just as it would be on a film print. The screen ratio is approximately 2.4 to 1, and the sound has been remastered into Dolby Atmos, but with DTS HD as an option, and also what should be the original Dolby stereo listed as 2.0. This is the 4-channel stereo which was known as Pro Logic for the home market. The film runs for about 2 hours and 10 minutes, and there are a few extras which are contained this time on the 4K disc. Nothing much though, but who cares when you've got a disc this good? I know some will be unhappy that it doesn't come with a slipcover, but it wouldn't have stopped me buying it during our recent visit to HMV. Unlike the LaserDisc, the packaging does not come with a reproduction of the fabulous release poster on the front, but it is on the 4K disc itself. It seems Arnold's face is a better selling tool than good poster art, so that may explain why we rarely see stylish film posters any longer. It is quite amazing to me that we are able to purchase these films for so little for the quality in which they are now being released. I think we are looking here at home videos that are the equal of, or possibly even better than, the projections in many cinemas. I know that sometimes there is the odd problem with a disc and sometimes a transfer that does not seem to be quite as good as expected, but these 4K discs and their Blu-ray counterparts, when taken from the same masters, really are quite unbelievable. And in that regard, I'm still working on a 4K review of Apocalypse Now, and that one truly is unbelievable to look at. But more of that when I finally get a video review recorded and uploaded. Now, one of the videos I picked up at HMV in our last visit that I showed in our last video, if I recall correctly, is the Blu-ray of The Deep, which came with the Cinema Retro miniature. And we watched this last night. And whereas I won't say this film is brilliant, it is quite masterful. The John Barry score is probably the standout thing about it. Similar in many ways to Raise the Titanic without that main theme overture, but it does make you feel like you're underwater with the cast and crew. And they really did send the cast underwater for this. They were down there scuba diving. It looked dangerous to me at times. There's one or two grainy special effects in this, and you've got to bear in mind, particularly younger people watching, back in, when was this, 77, 78, there weren't computer generated imagery, and when they put these effects on a big screen, the 35mm was blown up huge, and so you couldn't really tell that you were looking at special effects. And that was how it was made and how it was supposed to look. The only other time we saw these films was when they got a broadcast on television, and back then television images weren't exactly brilliant. So it was a different world, and these films were made for that world, but that is only a couple of shots. And this has got a great cast: Jacqueline Bisset, Nick Nolte, Robert Shaw, who of course was in the previous Peter Benchley film Jaws. This, apart from being in the water and going down deep, and the odd little tiger sand shark, or sand tiger shark, or whatever it is, has got no relationship to Jaws at all, but it's got a great atmosphere. It takes you back to the 1970s, and the image quality on this is pretty good. Best news of all, and I got an email from HMV the other day, so you can order it online. $5.99, so make sure it's got Cinema Retro with it. If it hasn't, you're going to have to get on Cinema Retro's website and order a back copy of the issue where they had The Deep. But anyway, we both really enjoyed The Deep for the first time in almost 40 years. So I think that brings us to the end again. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and perhaps consider subscribing, so I'll be encouraged to create even more content like this again in the future. So until the next video, bye bye for now.